So today we're going to be going over the Google Drive and some of the processes for our archiving. So why do we use a Google Drive when we have a website? The Google Drive serves three purposes. One, it acts as a backup to the website. It's always good to just have these important archiving images and other resources in multiple places just in case something were to go wrong. It also acts as a conduit for our archiving process. One student could take images of a bunch of artifacts and upload them to the Google Drive, and then another student could use those images in the Google Drive and then upload them to the website. One student doesn't have to do all parts of the process. It can be shared among multiple. And finally, if an image of an artifact is needed for an article or social media post or for another reason, it can be pulled straight from the drive. And while they can be downloaded from the website, it just adds another option for accessibility. Now there are three prerequisites to actually uploading files to the Google Drive that you have to make sure before you upload them. So number one, there can't be any duplicate images. We only need one image per side and angle of artifacts, and we only need to archive one yearbook from each year and one issue of The Voice per published date. So if, for example, if there was like five copies of the yearbook from 2008, we don't need to upload five images of the yearbook from 2008. We just upload one, and the same goes for The Voice. Images also need to be cropped appropriately before being uploaded. This is supposed to be a plug-and-play experience. A scholar is supposed to be able to just upload straight from the Google Drive without having to do any other editing or cropping. So there will be a video on how to crop images appropriately, and that'll be linked in the description when that is made. So refer to that for information about cropping. The last prerequisite is that image file format needs to be either JPG or JPEG or JPEG. Those two things are the same thing, by the way, just different spellings that you may encounter. So this is the most compatible file format, and it's the one that works for the website. So if you click on this pop-up that's going to be on the screen, or if you check the description, there's a video on how to ensure that your images are in this file format. Let me show you an example real quick, but you'll see the .jpeg here. I'll see if I have an example of the JPG. Yeah, so here you see JPG. Sometimes it's uppercase, sometimes it's lowercase. If it is an HEIC, which is another common file format for Apple devices, you're going to have to visit the video that I just talked about to convert that, because that will not work with the website. So the next thing that we need to do is talk about where do you upload these images. As you can see, we have 4 folders here, and there may be more in the future, but right now we have 4 different categories of artifacts. So this may be somewhat self-explanatory, but I'm going to go over it just in case. If an artifact comes from the Stover Farmhouse, it's going to go in the Stover Farmhouse artifacts folder. If it comes from the school the school archive, you're going to put it in the school artifacts folder. If the artifact is an edition of The Voice, it's going to go in the Voice folder, and if it's a yearbook, it's going to go in the yearbook folder. As far as The Voice goes, that's where our discussion ends for this video. It's a lot more in-depth of a process than uploading other images here, so we're just going to leave that for a separate video to be able to fully explain it. As far as yearbooks, it's just drop it right in. There's no subfolders because we only need one image per yearbook or per year. It's not too bad to just dump them all in here with no other information or organization, sorry. As far as the farmhouse artifacts and the school artifacts, there is a little more organization. They both have 2 subfolders, which is 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional artifacts. So that's for the farmhouse and for the school archives. So if a artifact is 2-dimensional, it goes in the 2-dimensional folder. If it's 3-dimensional, it goes in the 3-dimensional folder. Now, sometimes this may be sort of difficult to tell just from the photo, but artifact IDs have that information in it. You see the 2D right there? That's why it's in the 2-dimensional folder. If it said 3D, it would go in the 3-dimensional folder. On that topic of artifact IDs, you do have to name the artifacts once you drop them into the Google Drive. So Thankfully for you, you don't have to actually know the naming conventions because most of the artifacts you're going to be uploading already have been labeled with stickers or a hanging tag. So you're just going to copy that information into here with one caveat. There will be a video at some point about how to make these naming conventions, but for this purpose, you won't need to know that. So the one caveat is that since we're going to have multiple images per artifact, so for example, we have a front of the artifact and we have a back of the artifact, we can't name two files the same exact thing because Google Drive and just any computer won't allow that in general. So we have to add what I'm going to call an alphabetical discriminator. So each image is going to get a letter of the alphabet directly following the artifact ID. So ordinarily this artifact ID is going to be S/F-2D-34. To differentiate this front image from this back image, I'm going to put a letter. We're going to go in alphabetical order, so the first image is going to get an A. The second image is going to get a B. Now, there may be a case where we have an artifact that has 4 images. The third image is going to get a C, the fourth image is going to get a D, so on and so on. The only other sort of special scenario is if the artifact ID already has an alphabetical letter in it. So that's going to happen when we have like a 3-dimensional artifact that has multiple pieces to it. So each piece is going to get an alphabetical discriminator, if that makes sense. So I'm going to use like an example. If we had a box with a doll in it, the box and the doll are going to have the same artifact ID because they're one artifact. But since there's 2 pieces, we have to differentiate between them. So the artifact ID of one piece is going to get an A on the end. The artifact ID of another piece is going to get a B on the end. So if we were to use an alphabetical discriminator for the image as well, we would have like 2 A's next to each other, 2 B's next to each other, and that's just confusing. So we're just going to separate it with a dash. So let me just do an example. Say this is my artifact ID, S/F-2D-34A. I need to add an alphabetical discriminator for the image. If I put it right next to it, that's kind of confusing and hard to read. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to do a dash and then my alphabetical discriminator. So the first image is going to get a dash A, the second image would get a dash B, the third image would get a dash C, etc. So I think that's all of the information that you need to know to upload images. If you have any questions, ask an advisor, and that's going to be all.